Don't yet have a quorum, and so, as I understand it, there are a number of our distinguished veterans here in the room here to talk about, as I understand it, and nod no if I'm incorrect, that you're here about item number 10, which is Senate payment to another agency. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. What I would like to do as chair of the committee and as president of the Senate here is ask two representatives of the veterans to please come forward and state your point of view for the record as to where you believe the Senate should send its, what, Greg, $4.8 million. $4.8 million that we have agreed to send to a state agency or a state program as part of contributing to solving the state's budget deficit. Your opinion as to where that money should go. I would like two representatives. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Steinberg.
Welcome, sir. Hello, sir. Please sit down and make yourselves comfortable.
Asking for 2.75.
Okay. Water.
Thank you. You want us to state our names?
Yes,
okay,
please.
My name is Tom Montague, Montague, and I live at the Veterans Home in Yountville.
And I'm Dick Hum. Also, I'm a 13-year resident at the home.
Mr. Montague, Mr. Hum, please tell us your point of view.
Well, I'm not sure that I understood what it is that you wanted, Mr. Steinberg, but what I'm saying is that there was a proposal to increase the fees for about 75 members of the home, which would double, more than double what they're paying now. For example, one couple paid $2,400, and if the proposed increase in the fees would be passed, that would increase their monthly outlay for their living at the Veterans Home to $6,000. It's about over 100% increase, 150% increase.
So this is the Senate Rules Committee,
right?
And we don't directly take up matters relating to the state budget. And as I understand it, again, your comment is very relevant, though, because I suppose what you're arguing is that we should spend that $4.8 million for the veterans' homes to try to make sure that those fee increases do not take place.
Yes, that's right, Mr. Steinberg. I'm sorry I didn't
That's all right.
explain
I
that.
just wanted to help you put it together.
Yeah, as I said, if I could just repeat, there's one couple there, and these are not the exception. There are many couples like this who they currently pay $2,400 a month for the two of them. Their fee increase would go to $6,000 a month, and many of the people would have to leave the home as a result of that because they're not able to afford that.
From $2,400 to $6,000.
Yes.
We will look into that, sir.
That's called a cap. The current cap is $1,200. That means nobody pays more than $1,200.
We will look into this.
Thank you.
Before we make a decision on this item, by the way, sir. Mr.
I'd just like to address the fact that these changes are coming right in the middle of the planning cycle that we who have ever entered the home debated about it for some time in order to come. Many of us are not lucky like myself with all my appendages. Many of them have lost their arms or legs and so forth and had to sell their house and cars and so forth in order to come in the veterans' home with a limited budget. But now that is being threatened, and they don't know whether they can't leave. They just have to stay. So what we're really asking for, at least, is to have the grandfather clause so that it protects those that are there, because that was a contract we entered into when we entered the home, and everything was based on that. And many of us just don't have the resources in order to juggle around. So if you would have the grandfather clause, they'll protect those that are there now. And then whatever changes you make on the other people will know what it is and have their eyes wide open, and they will come in under those whatever new conditions there are. But please leave those of us that have made the decision be able to stick to it, because many of us are trapped. We can't even leave if we wanted to.
That's the prime thing, is just grandfathering everybody who's here now. People who come in, say, after November 1st or whatever, they could be, the new fees might apply to them.
Well, let me respond in a couple of ways here. First of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you and all your fellow veterans traveling to Sacramento to exercise your right, and certainly you've earned the right more than most to express yourself to your elected representatives. Secondly, this situation that you just described really bothers me. And I'm sure it bothers members of the committee as well. There is no way that we should allow, if we can do anything about it, people, veterans who are living at the beautiful home, Yountville, been there, having to leave because of some major change in the financing. Third, this is why you're here today, is that as part of the $62 billion budget deficit that we have dealt with over the past 10 months in California, the Senate made a decision that we were going to take about $5 million from our operating budget, and we were going to devote it to some program or agency to help out. And so we have been, I don't want to say besieged, but there have been a number of important ideas that have been brought forward. We cut dental care for seniors and others of low income. And now the only way that many of those seniors can get dental care is in an emergency room. The administration has proposed that we devote the resources to CAL FIRE, and we all know what's going on with the fire situation in California. And now you are before us with a very compelling case of directing that money there. And so what we're going to do today, we were going to vote today. But what I'm going to suggest of the membership here is that we put this over again and take into consideration now your request. And we have options here. We could divide the money 3 or 4 ways and help out. We could pick one. And I think among us now that we have heard your story, we want to look into the circumstances and see if there might be some other way, aside from this money, to make sure that there is a grandfathering, as you suggested, for those who are currently living in the Veterans Home in Yountville. We want to find out the facts and figure out what our options are, and then we will put this over and make a decision on the disposition of the money. All right?
It's very kind of you, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for coming. You're welcome to. You're welcome, ma'am. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of the hearing, of course. But this is an important way to start off. We hear you, and let us see what we can do to try to help.
Thank you very much.
All right?
You're very kind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right. Let us call the roll for a quorum, please.
Senator Cedillo? Cedillo here. Dutton here. Oropeza? Onestad here. Steinberg?
Here.
Steinberg here. We have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. All right. Let us begin here with governor's appointees required to appear today. G. Michael Sutton is a member of the Fish and Game Commission. Mr. Sutton. Mr. Sutton, welcome to the Rules Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good to see you. We have tradition in the Rules Committee that we always want to give you an opportunity to introduce your family or any special guest who's here with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My family couldn't be with me today.
Hold on. Time out. I understand that Senator Maldonado is here and wants to introduce you. He's on the floor, and we'll, of course, extend that courtesy to him, so wait just a moment. Why don't you introduce your family first?
They couldn't be here today.
Okay. Senator Maldonado?
How are you?
Good to see you. Hey, you got to be two places in one time, huh?
Just like you. Except I'm a little less important.
Stop it.
Anyways.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Today I have the honor of reintroducing a friend of mine to this committee, and that's obviously Mr. Michael Sutton. He's up for reconfirmation as member of the Fish and Game Committee. As many of you know, my district includes 1/3 of the California coastline. And I've always valued, and I know that he has always valued, conservation of our oceans and obviously of our coastal resources. Mike has excelled as a commissioner, but his work is not done, and that's why I'm asking for you folks to reconfirm him. Let me tell you why I'm really here, Mr. President. He's a pilot, and he's a good one, and I think that's very important. But without further ado, I've known Mike for quite some time. He's a great friend. He's always been there for the community. He's done a fantastic job for the Central Coast. I can go on and on and on and all that he's done for Monterey County, the Monterey Bay Aquarium. He's been a park ranger and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think he's a great public servant who gives it all to do what's right for the people of California.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Maldonado, for coming, and that means a lot to the committee.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, Mr. Sutton, brief opening statement, then I want to turn it over to Senator Dutton, who I understand has some questions. Well, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Maldonado, for your kind introduction. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Michael Sutton, and I have been honored and privileged to serve as a member of the Fish and Game Commission for the past 2.5 years. As a lifelong hunter and fisherman, I understand that our job on the commission, all of us, is to be the best possible stewards of the state's wildlife resources. As you know, one of our most significant challenges today is to accomplish our mission in an era of declining budgets and fiscal crisis. We've got to find ways to bring back the salmon, to manage our fishing and hunting, to protect our coastline, and to bring back our game wardens in a condition of declining resources. California has fewer game wardens today than the state of Maryland, and we have to find ways to do more with less, all of us. As a former game warden myself, I have a special concern for this issue, and I've been doing everything in my power to help the plight of the wardens and to figure out how to do, as I say, more with less. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to address an issue that has troubled me for the past year or so. Earlier this year, during the debate over the Commission's work to implement the Marine Life Protection Act, various allegations were made of conflicts of interest on my part between my day job at the Monterey Bay Aquarium and my work on the Commission. Now, while it was clear that those allegations arose in the context of advocacy over the Marine Life Protection Act, nonetheless, I took those allegations very seriously. And I immediately sought an advice letter from the Fair Political Practices Commission, the FPPC, on the matter, requested an advice letter to put that matter to rest. In June, I received an advice letter which indicated I had no conflict and I was free to continue to vote on the MLPA and other marine issues before the Commission. Then in July, the FPPC ruled on a complaint that had been filed against me, again, finding no evidence of any conflict. Mr. Chairman, I have no conflicts, and I would be honored to continue to serve on the Commission. I keep a firewall between my day job and my work on the Commission, as do we all. Because as I said before, we all have the same jobs to be the best possible stewards of the state's precious wildlife resources, and I would be honored to continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutton. I appreciate you raising that issue and putting it right out there. And as you said, the FPPC issued a letter and a ruling saying that there was no conflict or was no problem. But so let's do this. Let's go right to the testimony here. Witnesses in support. Come on up. Now there are a lot of folks here. What I'm gonna ask. We got a lot of people. We have a busy agenda, so I'm gonna ask people not to repeat themselves, and it's sufficient with your name, organization, and the fact that you support the nominee, unless you have something really extra special to say. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Tom Raftigan, I'm president of the Sport Fishing Conservancy. I'm a member of the Marine Fish Advisory Committee to the Secretary of Commerce of the United States, and really represent the heart of the recreational fishing angling community. And I've hunted with Mike Sutton. I have fished with Mike Sutton. He's been absolutely open for working with him, and strongly support him.
Thank you, sir, very much.
My name is Don Benninghoven. I'm the most recent appointee to the Fish and Game Commission. The president of the Fish and Game Commission, Jim Kellogg, the vice chairman, Richard Rogers, and the other commissioner, Dan Richards, all had planned to be at this meeting to support Mike Sutton's confirmation. But with the shift, they could not make it. So they asked me to speak on their behalf in support of Mike Sutton, and that's why I'm here. And we disagree on issues, but there's a lot of real strong feeling of support among the commissioners, and I just wanted to let you know that.
Very much appreciated. Mr. Broad?
Mr. Chairman and members. Barry Broad on behalf of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters and the California Conference of Machinists. Mr. Sutton's a strong conservationist. We have a lot of members who are fishermen and hunters and outdoorsmen and women, and they appreciate his service and support him. I will say this, as an appointee myself to various boards and commissions, there's nothing easier for somebody who's interested in character assassination to do is except to just file something with the FPPC. 99% of those things get thrown in the round file, but the accusation is there, and it sort of is one of these "when did you last beat your wife" situations. You are constantly saying, I didn't do anything wrong, even though you didn't do anything wrong. It's an accusation that stands, and I hope that no member here is ignorant that is often happens.
Thank you very much. Again, I just name, organization, and support.
Karen Garrison, Natural Resources Defense Council. I'm co-director of our Oceans program. We're here to support Mike Sutton. He's got an excellent track record. He has a rare depth of knowledge on marine issues. He's helped revive the Marine Subcommittee to raise attention to coast and ocean issues. And with 6 years as a park ranger and special agent for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I think he's uniquely equipped to address and understand the pressures on our fish and game wardens.
Thank you.
I hope you reconfirm him.
Caitlin Gaffney with Ocean Conservancy, and I've also been authorized to speak on behalf of Wild Coast. We are in strong support of the confirmation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gaffney.
Good morning. Pamela Flick with Defenders of Wildlife. We strongly support the confirmation of Mr. Sutton. We feel his expertise, ranging from World Wildlife Fund to game warden and ranger. He has a strong understanding of policy, and his passion is obvious for our natural resources, and we feel he will continue to be a strong steward for our public trust resources, and we urge your confirmation of it.
Thank you very much.
Tom Weslow, California Trout. You have our letter on file. We strongly support Mike. We think he's going to be great, and we look forward to working with him in the future.
Thank you very much.
April Wakeman, United Anglers. As fishermen, we've always found Mike to be incredibly accessible, able to understand our issues and act accordingly.
Thank you.
My name is Charles Bucaria. I'm with the Northern California Council of Federation of Fly Fishers. These are my personal comments. Mr. Sutton's day job is funded by a gracious public interest organization. Mr. Sutton's job on the commission is to protect the public trust assets of the people of California, and in this, he's done an admirable job. It's my pleasure to support his nomination.
Thank you very much, sir.
Senator Steinberg. My name is Eric Mills, coordinator of Action for Animals out of Oakland. I've been following the commission for about 20 years now. I think Mr. Sutton is the most highly qualified man or woman I've seen up there in maybe forever.
Thank you.
In 139 years, we've had 2 women on this commission. I think, barring a sex change, I hope we see some women in the future,
It's about time.
Yes.
Time to change that.
I'd like to point out one thing, too. I went to the commission meeting yesterday, and quite often the commission has been, in the past, just a rubber stamp of what the department wants. For 15 years, I've been trying to get some improvements in the live animal market situation with frog and turtle importation. And Mr. Sutton,
frog and turtle
importation for the live animal food markets. And the department was going to table it again after 15 years. And Mr. Sutton spoke up very, I thought, eloquently and in favor, and we're going to move forward with some improvements. So he's got my vote. Thank you.
Very good.
I'm Mark Rockwell. I'm the Vice President of Conservation for the Northern California Council Federation of Fly Fishers. I handed in a letter of support to the committee this morning from my organization, which represents 31 member clubs and over 6,000 members. And I think my main comment for Mr. Sutton, or about Mr. Sutton, focuses on the importance of restoring salmon as a viable species here in California. And Mr. Sutton has done yeoman's work in working with the Salmon Stronghold Center, or the Wild Salmon Center, for the Salmon Stronghold legislation, and has helped to get the Smith River strategic planning process going with the Department of Fish and Game to restore salmon. So we highly ask the committee to confirm.
Thank you very much for coming.
Mr. President and members, Melva Bigelow, State Government Relations Director for the Nature Conservancy, and I'm here in support of Mr. Sutton.
Mr. Chair, panel members, Justin Malone on behalf of the Environmental Defense Fund. Mr. Sutton's credibility, his commitment beyond reproach. We urge your approval.
Thank you.
Hello, Virginia Handley with PAWPAC in support of Commissioner Sutton. And although we would one day like to see someone who's not a hunter make it to the commission, that seems to be a requirement, which we don't agree with. But I'm very impressed with Mr. Sutton, and on the issue of the lead shot, that he was the one to really look at the environment and protect it.
Thank you very much.
Michael Endicott with Sierra Club, California. What they all said and what Mr. Addis is about to say. We're in support.
That's the testimony of the day. There we go.
Reed Addis on behalf of Audubon, California, in strong support.
Thank you, Mr. Addis. All right, witnesses in opposition. There are no witnesses in opposition. Somebody coming up? No, no witnesses in opposition. Senator Dutton, do you have any questions?
Well, if somebody else does, I'll...
Does anybody else have questions? Senators Cedillo, Onestad? Okay, well, we can...
I can start, Phil.
If you're ready. If not, we can take a short break, whatever you want.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to go through some of these things and some of the things that Commissioner Sutton just said, and I was trying to... I was getting a little confused from some of the representation. You and I have met before, and I know you have an extensive background and so forth in as a federal, fish and wildlife warden, and certainly have the background. You made a statement about the shortage of game wardens. That's certainly something close and dear to my heart, and that you feel a commitment to making sure that we have adequate enforcement and so forth. Yet, regarding the Marine Life Protection Act, there is a concern that by going forward with that, we may end up putting wardens at risk, actually, because we're stretching their resources far beyond their capability. So I'm not sure, could you maybe elaborate a little bit more about how you're dealing with the public safety issues or the safety issues of our wardens, but yet we still seem to be providing more, we're piling more things onto them beyond their resources.
Thank you very much, Senator. And you've touched on an issue that is of concern to all of us on the Commission. I said before, we have fewer game wardens in the state of California than we do in the state of Maryland, which to me is really not a satisfactory situation. They are responsible for enforcing virtually everything we do at the Commission. I've done a couple of things to try to help alleviate the burden on our wardens while we're dealing with our fiscal crisis, while you all are. One is to try and solicit federal partners and other state agencies to help our wardens get the job done. I understand that the department is just about to sign a memorandum of understanding with a number of other federal agencies, the Park Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the NOAA, state parks, and other state agencies to help the wardens get the job done. So that's one important piece of work. The other thing that I've done, and my fellow commissioners as well, is we have encouraged the legislature to pass legislation to help bring dedicated funds to the wardens. For example, a bill that would create a warden stamp, a voluntary stamp that hunters and fishermen could buy, affixed to their licenses to show their support for the wardens, and the revenue would come directly back to the wardens. So I would like to continue to do whatever I can in my power to help alleviate the funding crisis that affects our wardens and all the work that we do.
With regards to the MLPA, back when that was passed in 1999, it was estimated by our staff at Senate Appropriations to cost only about $300,000. Now that has ballooned to costing over $35 million. I'm not sure how you can justify voting to implement that, what I consider to be actually a very good act, but how you can vote to go forward with that, given our current financial crisis, and still at the same time say that you're sensitive about putting wardens at risk or overstretching their resources. I don't understand how you can continue to go down that path when you do things like that. Plus, also, why don't you address the cost issue, because $35 million is a far cry from $300,000.
Senator, we all of us on the commission have been concerned about the cost of implementing all of the things that we do, the MLPA, the hunting and fishing programs. The department implements a number of programs that are costly. In recent years, we've found innovative ways to deal with those costs, public-private partnerships, for example, such as the one that's helping implement the MLPA. The latest cost estimates that we have from the MLPA initiative suggest that it will cost about $11 million a year to implement the statute statewide, once the statewide series of marine protected areas is established. Two-thirds to three-quarters of that cost would be borne by partner agencies, universities, and so forth, leaving the department with perhaps $3 to $5 million a year to fund out of their budget. And as I say, all of us are interested in helping in any way we can to generate those funds to help figure out a way to afford to do this, because it's important to not to put excessive burden on our wardens. As I say, we do a lot of things that are expensive at the commission, and we're all dedicated to help. Of course, the commission, we don't control even our own budget, nor do we have any way to raise revenue. The department controls our budget, and so we are limited in our power to help. But we do everything we can to make sure that we can afford to implement what we enact at the commission.
Mm-hmm. Well, what happens if the federal money and the partner money disappears, and we have to be prepared? We aren't going to just walk away from it. I mean, there's no guarantee this keeps coming up or that we're going to be able to continue to have the funds. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, you've got some federal experience. I've always been pretty critical of the federal government because they own over 50% of California. I think they do a terrible job in giving us resources to take care of their property here. So,
well, Senator, at the moment, the public-private partnership is helping defray the costs of the planning and the implementing of the MLPA. As you say, there is no guarantee of future private funds being devoted to this. The federal government has its own fiscal issues. But I'm confident by working together and seeking innovative sources of funding from a variety of partners that we can put together a package that will help us implement this statute and all of the other things we do that are expensive.
Was your approval of the MLPA contingent on that happening, or is it going forward even without having those partnerships solidified and put together?
Well, Senator, we've discussed this a lot at the Commission, and all of us are concerned about not wanting to impose unfunded mandates on the Department. On the other hand, the Governor has instructed us to implement this statute, and that's our job, and we are proceeding apace to do that, while at the same time being very conscious and paying attention to where we might find the revenue. So we're certainly concerned about that, and I personally would do everything I can to encourage the federal government and private partners to step up to the plate.
Mm-hmm. And what was the vote on implementing the plan on the commission?
On the Marine Life Protection Act? Mm-hmm. The last vote that we had, we're doing the coast of California in sections. The last section was the north central coast on the Mendocino and Sonoma coasts. We approved the recommended set of marine protected areas by a vote of 3-2 on the commission.
So, and there was a commissioner, I guess, that just recently resigned too, and there was a new commissioner that came in place. It would seem like not everybody's in total agreement that maybe we should. I don't think anybody was necessarily against the plan, but it was just the funding concerns. It would appear as and I realize 3-2 is a landslide. Everybody can count, but it would just seem like there must have been some obvious concerns about the ability to be able to fund this, and were we stretching our resources too much? I'm still a little concerned in that area. Let's talk a little bit about some of the conflict of interest that you said was filed and people made reference to. Your current employment. Your current employer, you've been employed for the marina for, over 4 years? Or
I've been at the Monterey Bay Aquarium for 5 years now.
5 years now? And you have a good understanding of the aquarium's operations and so forth. You've been there quite a while, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you joined the commission, you were given the conflict of interest filing requirements and so forth?
Yes, sir.
Like every commissioner was? Yet on 3 consecutive filings, you didn't note any income from your employer, despite having operations that would perhaps qualify as at least a disclosure area and so forth. But now you've made the necessary amendments and so forth. My concern would be is during that long period of time, how would the department know if there was a possible conflict on all the business that maybe came before the commission, if you never made that disclosure? And has anybody gone back to take a look at the activities of the commission? Because you are the appellate body for some actions of the Department of Fish and Game. Has anybody gone back and taken a look to make sure that we don't have any conflicts that existed out there in some of these decisions? Which may have had a bearing on these decisions?
Senator, when I first joined the commission 2.5 years ago, I sought legal advice at the time and from the Attorney General's office, among others, about whether I had any reportable interests that would be required to be reported under the commission's guidelines on the subject. At that time and still today, all the advice that I've received is that my employment does not fall within any of the categories required to be reported by the Commission. However, in the interests of full transparency, I recently amended my Form 700 to go ahead and declare all of my financial interests, and including my employment.
Yeah, I was reading, what I was taking some time was because I was reading the opinion letter I guess you received from let's see, who is this from? From your attorney, I believe it's your attorney, Stephen Lucas?
Yes.
Okay. And I was trying to go through here. It's kind of a lengthy document, and I was trying to go through here. There was a statement in here, and do you happen to have this with you?
I don't.
Okay. It talks about compensation. I saw it, determining financial interest, and it goes through, is generally prohibited from making decisions, so on and so forth. And it says here, in light of the facts set forth above, Commissioner Sutton is deemed to have a financial interest in the aquarium as a source of income. Therefore, the aquarium constitutes a potential disqualifying financial interest for Commissioner Sutton. And that kind of was, I was trying to figure out for sure where this fits in, because that would seem to indicate that, well, you probably should have reported it. You're saying that you weren't required to, but that would seem to indicate from your own attorney that, yeah, you do have. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can clarify, you can clear that up for me.
Well, Senator, as I said before, all of the advice that I've received ever since I joined the Commission has been that my employment does not fall within any of the categories that are required reporting categories. However, As I say, in the interest of full transparency, I have recently amended all of my Form 700, going back to the beginning of when I was appointed, just to, in the interest of transparency, to disclose everything. The FPPC, as I say, has sent me 2 letters now saying that I have no conflicts and I'm free to continue voting on the Marine Life Protection Act and other marine issues before the Commission.
I'm actually not necessarily talking just strictly about the Marine Protection Act itself. I'm concerned about other things that may come before the Commission, because it goes on to say here from your attorney, accordingly, Commissioner Sutton is prohibited from participating in the making, or otherwise using his official position to influence a government decision if it is reasonably foreseeable the decision could have a material financial effect on the aquarium, which is basically who you work for. So there again, without that disclosure, the department wouldn't have any way of knowing. And so has anybody gone back and taken a look to see if there were any? Because I know there's people that have actually are connected with the aquarium that have taken out permits, things like that, for various kinds of activities. Did any of those come up on appeal in the last 3 years, or has anybody checked it out, or has anybody looked at it?
Well, Senator, this is part of the reason that I amended all of my Form 700 at the same time, going back to the beginning of when I was appointed. And as I say, I keep an absolute firewall between my day job at the aquarium and my work on the Commission. They're quite different. As I say, all of us on the Commission have the same job, to be the best possible stewards of our wildlife resources.
Okay. Well, you had another commissioner who just recently resigned because of not having a legal conflict, but perception. So do you not even think there's a perception of conflict here?
Senator, I can't speak to the perception of all of our constituents, but I'll tell you this. It's important to me that to meet with each and every one of our constituents, to take all of their points of view into account when we make decisions, to be as objective as possible in making decisions and voting on the Commission, and that's what I do.
Okay. So, sorry, I was just going to conclude. I'm going to be requesting that we hold your appointment. We have until January, correct?
I was reappointed
January 15th,
in February of this year.
I've got some other things that have come up that I really need to have time to take a look at. I haven't chance. I'm not going to be able to vote to confirm you today. I would prefer to see it held over, but I'll wait until Chairman Steinberg gets here and see what his pleasure is. But I'm going to be recommending that we hold over your confirmation until some of these other things can be clarified. Thank you.
Senator Cedillo, do you have any comments or questions?
Not at the moment.
Then I'll jump in if you're concluded.
I'm done.
And we'll wait for Senator Steinberg to get back to make a determination of whether or not we honor Senator Dutton's request. It just seems to me, Mr. Sutton, and thank you for your time that you spent with me in my office a couple weeks ago now, I guess, and your very forthright and frank answers to some of my questions. It was a very good discussion. Politically, we probably disagree on a few things, but I think the part that bothers me the most on this 5-member commission, there are no slots like there are on other commissions. For example, there's not an environmentalist slot. There's not an industry slot. My understanding is that all 5 of these positions are called public. To me, that means that you don't have to be uninformed, and that you don't have to be without experience. But it does mean that you need to be open-minded, and you need to be biased. Now, you had a lot of testimony here today from folks throughout the whole parameter of the industry that you come in contact with in support, and I understand that, and stipulate that you're a good man and probably well qualified for a position like this, except one thing bothers me. You are a paid political advocate for a particular political point of view. You have used your position working for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. You've earned a salary advocating for something that is very controversial, the Marine Life Protection Act. The Monterey Bay Aquarium Board has publicly announced that this is one of the primary reasons for their being involved in their advocacy. It's been in the newspapers. And you are the person charged with carrying out that program for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. It does not seem to me, it reminds me, your answer reminds me somehow of a skit that I saw on a Robin Hood film once, where Friar Tuck, they're involved in a skirmish, and he's got that big stick, and he's hitting somebody. He says, God help me. Hit somebody, God help me. And then when he's asked, how can you as a man of God be involved in a fight and be hitting people? And he says, well, the man of God part is my day job. I don't think you can separate the two. I don't think it's possible. And that's why I have a real concern when we have somebody who, in my opinion, cannot, on a very controversial political issue, cannot be open-minded and unbiased. Your income is derived from the advocacy of that position. And so I'm looking for a board member who is well qualified like you are, but perhaps doesn't come from the industry, doesn't come from the advocacy group, but is simply a citizen or a resident of the state of California who has a major interest in public service without a political agenda. I don't think that's you, and that's why I can't support your nomination.
Senator, thank you for those thoughtful comments. It is true that I have worked for a very long time to protect our ocean and coastal resources in California, and I happen to believe that that is in the best interest of all Californians, no matter whether we're users or not of those resources. And when I joined the Commission, I brought this very issue up to the Attorney General's office and ultimately, subsequently, to the FPPC. And they told me to a person that mere advocacy does not a conflict make, and that all of us on the Commission have the responsibility to keep our day jobs, whatever they may be, separate from our work on the Commission. And I feel confident that I have been able to do that and will continue to be able to do that and sit as an objective member of the Commission on all the range of decisions that we make. As you quite correctly said, Senator, we don't have seats on the Commission for an environmentalist or a hunter or a fisherman or any particular constituencies. We all have the same job, and that's to represent the citizens of California and be the best possible stewards of our wildlife resources. That's what I have done and would like to continue to do as objectively as possible. And I think I can speak for my fellow commissioners that we all believe the same thing on that score.
Thank you. And because we have no other senators here to take part in the discussion, I think that what we ought to do is just take a very brief recess until Senator Steinberg can dispose of this. Okay? So why don't we just take a recess?
I did catch most of the questioning here. And Senator Cedillo.
Mr. Chair, I want to make a few comments. We are here evaluating this appointment. My colleagues have raised some very good points. Is it appropriate for us to appoint someone who has a political perspective, a viewpoint, with respect to the commission for which they are being assigned? The nominee is one of 5. They are all public appointments. I have this concern. And I have this concern because every time we appoint someone to the parole board, there are always someone who is in their day job or their avocation, someone whose only commitment is to keep people in jail. The mission of the parole board is to remove people from jail. And yet we never hesitate, which is why I never vote for them, because it's only people whose job is in the day and in their volunteer service to keep people in jail. That is not the case here. We have one of 5, and we have a mission in which the mission, see, the difference here is there's a conflict in the mission of the parole board and those that we are stacking the parole board with. The mission of the parole board is to seek out those who are suitable to be released, to release prisoners. And we have created this overwhelming problem that is collapsing, or playing a role in collapsing our budget. And their day jobs are inconsistent with that. On the other hand, this commission's job and this man's day job are wholly consistent with each other, because they're to be stewards of our natural resources. So there's not a conflict, there's a congruence, there's a convergence. Now, on the legal question, it's already been determined. There is no conflict. And I see no appearance of conflict, nor perception of conflict. There's no financial gain. There's no program, nonprofit, NGO, organization for which he will receive some benefit, for which he then passes judgment on. The very nature of his work. It was as if we precluded law enforcement officers from being on post. This is what this is more analogous to. This is like saying on peace officer standards and training that someone would be excluded because they were a police chief. That's what this is like. We're arguing, if you take the analogy, we're arguing that the very nature of this man's day job and his organization disqualifies him. That's like arguing that someone who's a police chief is disqualified from being from post. So we have no legal conflict that's been determined. And if we evaluate this in terms of what the mission is of the commission and the purpose of his organization, the police chief and post, there's no conflict, there's a convergence. Makes him more appropriate to be positioned. And I move for his appointment.
Thank you. I think, Senator Steele, my view is that I couldn't say it any better than the way you just said it. It's well said. I agree. I don't want to say it's a double standard to think otherwise, but the fact of the matter is, I think you just said it very well. I know Senator Dutton disagrees. Would you like to make any comments, Senator Dutton?
No, I've just been going through the material that was provided with regards to the FPPC and his attorney's letter, and I just got more questions, so I wouldn't be able to do it at this time. I still think it's reasonable to hold over the appointment. We got plenty of time, but it's whatever the pleasure of the chair, but I won't be able to vote at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. Good discussion. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Oropesa? Aye. Oropesa, aye. Onnested?
No.
Onnested, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Passes 3-1 with one abstention. Will go to the Senate floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Sutton. Let us move on and call both James J. Ostrowski and Bruce Saito as appointees for the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. Thank you both very much for appearing. I want to just begin with just an opening comment, which is maybe tangentially relevant to the confirmation hearing, but just it's something I want to put out. I know that this board sets policy for CAL FIRE, which was once the Department of Forestry. And the issues in both realms could not be more important, especially now with the huge fires burning. We're also obviously interested in the forestry side of the job. I just want to say for future consideration to the members that I'm not completely convinced that this board and the department structure is the best one for California. I want to continue to explore the idea of firefighting issues separate from forestry issues, but recognize that that's probably a conversation for another day. So that's just me taking advantage of the microphone here and making a statement. Now, you gentlemen, always the opportunity to introduce members of your family or special guests, and then brief opening statements, and we'll get right into the questions.
Good morning, Senator and members of the committee. My family was not able to attend today.
Okay, welcome.
Senator, thank you. I have no family members here.
Okay. You're Mr. Ostrowski, and you're Mr. Okay. Just want to make sure. Opening statements.
I'll go first. My name is Bruce Saito. My day job, or my life's job, is the executive director of the Los Angeles Conservation Corps, where I've served as the nonprofit executive director for 23 years now. Prior to that, I was served and worked with the California Conservation Corps from 1976 to 1986. No, 1986 to 1996, excuse me. I'm happy to be here, and I've been privileged to serve on the board of forestry for the past 4 years, and I'm committed to serving, if approved, another 4 years. Thank you.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Jim Ostrowski. I am currently, my day job is we're going through, speak up. My day job, I'm the timberland manager for Timber Products Company, live in Mount Shasta, California. It's a privilege to be before you today to discuss the confirmation of my reappointment as member of the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. I would first like to acknowledge the support that I have received during the last 3.5 years that I've served on the board, specifically to my wife, Katie, and our 4 children. They've been very patient and understanding of the responsibility to put duty over self on this in this service. I also want to thank my employer, Timber Products Company, its owners, the Gagne family, for their support of my time spent on the board, a great deal of which is devoted to projects well beyond any company interests. As you probably are aware, I do serve into one of the industry, or the positions on the board reserved for industry members. The service to the people of California as a member of the Board of Forestry has been a challenge. I have tried to bring science, a long-term vision, in my experience as a registered professional forester, to issues that in many cases are very emotional and personal to the people who appear before the board. I believe that the board has accomplished many positive improvements for dealing with forest management, fire management, and watershed protection during my term on the board. The members of the board bring a diverse background to the process, and we do not always agree on the best solution. I can vouch for not being able to always convince the majority of the board to my point of view. But I also think this diversity is a strength that leads to better solutions to some very complex issues. Many individuals and groups are not always happy with the results of the board's decision, but I can assure this committee that the board has listened to all of the voices and has tried to make a balanced and sound decision. California's over 80 million acres of forests and rangelands are becoming ever more valuable for everything from wood and food production to clean water and carbon sequestration. California needs dedicated and knowledgeable leaders and decision makers to deal with the management of these lands. I take this responsibility very seriously and stand by my record of serving the public's varied interest over my first term. I am willing to continue the service if you choose to confirm me for a second term on the board. There's still more to do, and I look forward to continued service to California's urban and rural citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrowski and Mr. Saito. I want to ask questions of both of you, but I want to focus my questions, at least initially, to Mr. Ostrowski. And to state that I respect your public service, and there's no question that the law provides for an industry representative, and that's all well and good. There has to be some balance here, and as with everything we do in the legislature, to move anything forward requires compromise, and I certainly am about that. And yet, for 9 years, there has been no permanent regulations for threatened and impaired watersheds, and a common agreement that our salmon fisheries are nearly extinct. And so, Mr. Ostrowski, there have been a number of issues related to what you have done and proposed in your first term that I really want to explore with you. And I say that they cause me concern, but I want to have this dialogue and give you a chance to respond. We know that the Department of Fish and Game proposed a rules package that is supported by the Schwarzenegger administration, by CAL FIRE and by Fish and Game and by the National Marine Fisheries Services. On June 25th, you produced a set of 11 proposals, amendments, that have been described pretty universally as weaker than the administration's package. And some have said that you did not share that package with other board members or board staff prior to the meeting, and that the public itself couldn't get copies of the proposals until 4 hours after the meeting. So I have a series of questions. Number one, do you agree that the proposals that you put forward were weaker in terms of salmon protection than the regulations, proposed regulations put out by the Schwarzenegger administration?
Senator, on those, at that occasion, just to kind of clarify what led up to my motion or attempt to make a motion, actually, the board had produced a draft rule that we submitted for public comment. In June, at the meeting that you referenced, we had that public hearing and received both written and oral comments about our draft proposal. At that time, as part of the written comments, the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection and Department of Fish and Game presented a joint proposal that took some of the board's noticed package as well as many changes presented by the joint department proposal, and they submitted that as an alternative, essentially. We received those comments and proposals a few days before our hearing. The board's job, as trying to be impartial and listen to all of the comments coming in, is to take all of the public comments at the time of the hearing, and if some of those comments make sense for changing our notice proposed package, then our job is to propose or motion that we amend our proposed or our noticed package for further consideration of the board and possibly additional public comment. So what I was doing at that meeting was taking all the public comments, and there were many comments that we did not hear. We had not seen the department's joint proposal, like I said, until a few days before the meeting. Many of the public comments that we received were critical of portions of the joint department's proposal. And so in consideration of all of those comments, as well as other sections of public comments, I tried to craft what I thought was a balance between the joint agency proposal and some of the other public and agency comments. We had many comments from the water boards, from NIMS, the National Marine Service, and many environmental groups that were not supportive of some of the portions of the joint agency. So trying to take all that into consideration, that's why I presented another proposal. Technically, we're not able to share that with board members. That would be essentially trying to make a decision prior to our meeting. We're supposed to do that at our meetings in front of the public so that the public has full disclosure of what's there. So that's why I was not able to present that before the meeting. And frankly, I was not able to really compile all that until I read and heard all of the public comments.
Well, there's some process issues, but there's the substantive issue. As a board member, you have every right to put forward your own ideas or your own proposals. Nobody questions that. I want to focus a little bit on process, but more on the substance of it. Mm-hmm. And my question was, did your proposed amendments weaken the administration's proposal as it relates to fisheries protection?
I did not think it weakened the proposal. There were certain specifics that were different, and there were some process portions about how certain stream characteristics were designated and things like that were different, but they did not weaken the protections.
How do you respond to this, then? I've got before me the September 2nd, 2009 letter under Governor Schwarzenegger's letterhead, but specifically from the state of California, the Natural Resources Agency, from Don Cook, Fish and Game Director, and Del Walters, the Director of the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, to George Gentry, the Executive Officer of your board, in which they state on page 2, as they talk about what amendments through the process were consistent with the administration's plan, they then say on page 2, quote, in contrast, optional amendments 9, 26, 27, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, and 106, which I understand are your amendments, would not provide adequate protection or contribute to recovery and restoration of listed salmonoid species and habitat on forested lands should they be adopted.
I haven't seen that letter, but I know what they're referencing there. And first of all, some of those amendments were not particularly my amendments. Some of the
amendments you proposed.
Well, no, they weren't necessarily that I have proposed. Those came from a proposal by Board Member Walls during the hearing process. My proposal took the options that the board had noticed and selected one or the other of the options. So some of those, the smaller number ones, are options. They weren't specifically mine. They came out of our committee work as two different ways to achieve the board's goals of protecting salmonids. So apparently the department is choosing which one they think is a better of those two, but the committee felt that they both protected salmonids.
So, I mean, we have a dispute here. There's a dispute here about whether or not what you propose substantively weakened the administration's proposed regulations, and it's a significant issue, obviously, because of the state of our fisheries. So I don't know, sitting here, quite how to resolve that. I suppose we'll hear from witnesses on process, and then I'll get it to Senator Cedillo here. Two things.
Well, just a question, because I don't want us to get lost in the vernacular here. When you indicate that there's, sounds like half a dozen proposals, he says they're not his, they came from the committee, but were they presented by you? We have a process here. Our bills come out of committee, but somebody has their name attached to them, then they get amended. They're not exactly our initial proposal, but we continue to be identified with them by our name and number. Are these proposals that, while they came out of the committee, that were presented by you and attached to you? How does someone get confused that these are your proposals?
Well, that's a good question, Senator. The way we work in committee is, at least in this particular case, we commissioned a science panel and a contract with an independent consulting science group to review the science around salmonid protection and forest management. And they came back with what the science, where there was strong agreement on various practices and the need for various protections, and where there maybe was differences of opinion or not enough information known to decide. So from that process in committee, we were able to develop, in some cases, options of two different ways of approaching salmonid protection and forest management. In many cases, there was just one good suggestion that the committee moved forward. But the committee, in many cases, moved forward two options. And it wasn't, though I may have preferred one or the other option, they weren't necessarily my proposal. We relied on staff working with a group from the Department of, or from CAL FIRE, and I think they worked with Department of Fish and Game to come up with some options and different ways to deal with what the issues we were looking at. So they weren't, usually we don't have our name attached to something necessarily.
Maybe, Senator Cedillo, we can have some of the witnesses sort of clarify from their perspective. I'm not being accusatory here, but the story is, and again, you have your right to present your alternative. I'm really trying to focus really on the substance as to what it is you proposed and whether or not it weakened the administration's regulations. That's what I'm interested in here. But on process itself, the way this worked, as I understood it, is that the board voted to put out a 45-day public comment period on the administration's proposal. And in the midst of that, you put forward this alternative before hearing the public comment on the administration's proposal. Why not wait until the public comment is received before suggesting what some describe, and I know you don't, but what some describe as a weaker alternative?
Well, I think there's some confusion possibly in the timelines. The initial 45-day notice package came from the board staff and the board's committee, forest practice committee work. And at that time, there were 33 optional options available within that package. The second 45-day notice was when we received the joint department's proposal. And the board, including myself, voted to move that to a 45-day public comment period.
Then after that, you floated this.
No, nothing's come since then. We're currently in that 45-day period. Yeah,
it was before.
Yeah, the possibly the issue you're referring to is that at the time, slightly before we actually noticed the first 45-day notice, there was a lot of confusion and frustration expressed that having all of these options, the 33 options, was going to make that package somewhat difficult for people to understand. Board member Nakamura and I, who were on the Forest Practice Committee and had worked within all these options, made the effort to show that what we thought was a reasonable mix of all of these options into a coherent package, and presented that to the board and to our executive officer to distribute to the board and to the public, so that they could, I guess, be assured that there was a workable group of options. So I don't. This latest package with the department's rewrite is a different, and we haven't done anything on that.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear some public testimony, and maybe that'll help sort of frame the issue a little bit better. Okay? Any comment?
No.
Okay. Let's hear witnesses in support of the nominees.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Anthony Thomas. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Anthony Thomas. My day job is the Vice President of Government and Legislative Affairs
for the day job stuff. All right.
It's also my night job and weekend jobs. I just wanted to make mention of that, Mr. Chairman. I head up Government and Legislative Affairs for the California Forestry Association. It is a pleasure to be here this morning with all of you. The association and our membership is in strong support of Mr. Ostrowski's confirmation today to the Board of Forestry. Mr. Ostrowski has more than 30 years in the timber products business and has been one of the most stellar, has one of the most stellar reputations as being professional, forthright, and a diligent businessman committed to his craft as a registered professional forester. As many of you know, our forest resources and timberlands in our great state are some of the most breathtaking in the world. And I don't mean on the coast, on the United States, I mean in the world. It is our view that Mr. Ostrowski is one of the best to represent the maintaining of our landscapes as well as our watersheds. His position on the board is an industry position. His position is an industry position. And with that, Jim provides what we all want within the legislative as well as the regulatory process, and that key word is balance. Now, I understand it might be some minor opposition to his confirmation today. But again, in looking in the terms of trying to provide balance to this board, it is our strong feeling that with Mr. Ostrowski's confirmation today that he will provide that balance and provide a continuous exchange of ideas for the betterment of our forests and our resources. Mr. Chairman and members, we urge your confirmation and your aid vote today.
Mr. Thomas, one quick question.
Sir?
You talk about balance. In your view, does the administration provide a balanced approach to forestry and fishery issues?
Can I answer that?
I think I'll defer to Senator Onestad on that.
No, but I mean, it's a fair question because we're arguing or discussing.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ostrowski's position on these issues relative to the administration's, and so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I believe that everyone here, including the administration, attempts to provide balance. I think that everyone comes here with attempting to provide the best policy and regulatory, not only opinions, but implementation. So my specific question is that I would state that, yes, the administration attempts to provide balance, right, just as I'm sure this board does as well.
Yeah, there's very, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Chairman and members, I am Eric Carlson, Executive Director of Associated California Loggers, representing the largely family-owned logging companies and log trunking companies in California. We're the small business infrastructure for timber harvesting, for the collection and transport of woody biomass alternative energy, and we're very involved in the efforts to prevent, fight, and clean up after forest fires. We're also in an extremely fragile economic state at this time, and we need experienced and fair officials such as Jim Ostrowski at the Board of Forestry. In addition to the obvious strength of Mr. Ostrowski's experience and educational credentials, he offers the Board of Forestry something very important at this time: continuity. A number of detailed technical issues have been before the board and its committee for a number of years. Mr. Ostrowski has participated in listening, speaking to the issues, participating and talks about the issues. Seems to us it's imperative that he remain on the board at this time so that his work on these issues heretofore is not in vain. We believe that you not only should want Mr. Ostrowski on the board, but we believe at this crucial time in terms of forestry issues, fire issues, and economic issues, you need him on the board. Well, I was just going to say one more thing. We've worked with him on a number of issues, and he has not always agreed with positions expressed by our association, but he's always been fair in expressing why.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. President, members of the committee, I'm David Bischel. I'm a licensed professional forester, president of the California Forestry Association, former executive officer of foresters licensing for the State Board of Forestry, and, of course, strong supporter of Jim. Jim has been a professional forester for 30 years. His credentials are unquestioned in terms of his ethics, his professionalism, his dedication to managing based upon science, and all you have to do is take a look at the forest that he's managed for the last 20 years at the north end of the state, the family forest that provides many union and non-union jobs for his company and others. I would like to address one issue that you brought up in terms of the Board of Forestry, and there is a sequence of activities that have occurred by the board. And, of course, the board is, in fact, designed to bring together a broad cross-section of interests and perspectives to take a look at these issues and make a determination on what is the appropriate policy that will, first and foremost, be environmentally sound, but also be socially responsible and economically feasible. In all three of those, without those three legs, you don't have good forest policy, and that's what the board looks at. The board issued when they first issued a rule package, and as Mr. Ostrowski indicated, it was 30-some odd options. He was not at that particular meeting when the board issued the first notice. The next meeting is when the department came in literally the day before. I mean, I don't think anybody had seen the department's proposal, which was a joint proposal to as an alternative to what the board had issued. And at that point, the board had a fairly vigorous discussion and incorporated about 8 to 10 additional options to the department's joint proposal and substituted that proposal for their previous issued rule package. So it was now based upon the joint proposal from the departments and included about a dozen options, or 8 to 10 options for the board's consideration at that point in time. Mr. Ostrowski did not pro-offer a single one of those options. Those were pro-offered by a couple, 2 or 3 other board members, and have been included now into the package that the board will be adopting next week, quite frankly. And so that's, I want to clarify that these, what you had identified were in no way pro-offered by, but that does not mean that the board's science, the board spent 2 years bringing together the best scientists in this state to evaluate the relationship of forest management activities to riparian vegetation and riparian attributes that are important public trust resources. And Mr. Ostrowski has been absolutely committed to utilizing that science as the foundation for the options that are in front of the board today.
Thank you for your little backdrop.
Good morning. Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau Federation. I just wanted to come here this morning and speak in support of both board members and ask for their confirmation. They're both thoughtful, open-minded individuals that do a good job of managing our state's natural resources. Thank you.
Reed Addis on behalf of Audubon, California, here in support of Mr. Saito. We obviously have interest in the board and their makeup and the decisions, and we really appreciate his work on the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Philip Ong on behalf of California Relief, and here in support of Mr. Saito.
Thank you.
Malva Bigelow on behalf of the Nature Conservancy, here in support of Mr. Saito, and we appreciate the urban and Southern California viewpoint he brings to the board.
Scott Greason, Executive Director of EPIC. I'm here in support of Mr. Sato. He has been one of a handful of board members who's consistently supported strengthened protections for our watersheds and imperiled fisheries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Member Scott Wetsch, on behalf of the Joint Labor Management Committee of the Forest Products Industry, on behalf of the carpenters and machinists and paper and pulp and mill workers in California, here in support of both of the nominees. Particularly, I'd like to speak in support of Mr. Ostrowski's confirmation. Representing one of California's most endangered species, California timber workers. We've lost 1,000 union jobs this year. His company that he works for during the day is one of the very few solid union employers that we have, and we think that that helps bring a balanced voice to him, to the board, having that background. So with that, we would support his confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wedge. Next.
Karen Garrison, NRDC, support of Mr. Saito.
Thank you.
Tom Weslow, California Trout, here in support of Mr. Saito.
Thank you.
Pamela Flick with Defenders of Wildlife in support of Mr. Saito.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, is there opposition to either of the nominees?
Hello again, Tom Weslow, California Trout. I want to thank you for a lot of your opening comments. They were addressing a lot of the concerns that we have. As you say, salmon have basically, there's no debate. They've tanked. Everybody's following the Chinook salmon closures, but we seem to forget quite often coho have been closed for fishing for almost 15 years in the ocean. They're not recovering. It's not just ocean conditions, it's habitat. The Board of Forestry has an obligation to deal with that habitat, and we have touched on the threatened and impaired process that have been in that temporary status for 9 years. What we haven't really touched on is the 2112 process that has also been literally debated since the state listing back in 2000. And what we have not really accomplished with those 2112s is the protections that we thought we would be getting. So as a result of that, we had to take two actions that we really weren't very fond of. One of them was litigating the board and the Department of Fish and Game, and the court ruled in our favor, and the board has still yet to act. That was really a result of our efforts to request an emergency petition to take emergency action to protect salmon. Mr. Saito voted in favor of that. Mr. Ostrowski voted to oppose it. I think we are really in a position where the chairman described it very well. We're on the verge of losing these fish. We need to take action. We need to take actions to protect and recover these species. We can't delay. We can't defer. We can't weaken rules. We need to make sure we're doing the right thing to allow salmon to not only continue to exist, but to recover. Given that, we urge you to confirm Mr. Saito, and we urge you to deny confirmation for Mr. Ostrowski. And we also ask you to continue. We really appreciate the efforts you took to reach out to the administration in some other issues that came before this committee related to this. And we think you really need to continue to do that, because we don't want to see these fish disappear, and I'm sure the governor doesn't want to see them on his watch, and we appreciate your efforts to do so.
We always reach out to the administration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Scott Greason from EPIC, based in Humboldt County. You have on file a letter with 14 organizations opposing Mr. Ostrowski's confirmation. We very much appreciate the careful attention you're giving to these issues today. Probably the most important task before the Board of Forestry for the last decade has been the need to bring forward effective and permanent rules to protect California's fisheries and impaired watersheds from unnecessary additional impacts. The crisis that Mr. Weslow described that existed when this effort started a decade ago, when the National Marine Fisheries Service put the board on notice that our existing forest practice rules were and are woefully insufficient to protect our salmon and steelhead, is now a full-blown emergency, particularly for the coastal runs of coho salmon and steelhead, which are among the most sensitive to logging impacts. We've reached critical junctures for these runs. I would note that 2,200 fishermen are out of work this year because of our closures on the fisheries. I would note as well that the proposed rules in preparation during this long decade of decline were intended to address our impaired watersheds. The growing impacts of global warming make it urgently necessary that we follow through on our commitment to restore these watersheds, which are impaired by various pollutants. Unfortunately, the Board of Forestry's proposed rule package fails entirely to provide any protections for impaired watersheds. Having carefully reviewed the proposed new rules, it's EPIC's position that the net effect of the proposed package in terms of the additional impacts on fisheries is likely to be negative. What, in our view, is beyond dispute is that the proposed package fails entirely to achieve a substantial move toward greater protection for California's impaired watersheds and critically impaired fisheries.
I don't want you to read the whole statement.
I'm certainly not going to. I'm trying to keep this as brief as possible.
Please.
You've noted the central issue, I believe, Mr. Ostrowski's role in the threatened and impaired rules package. I would note that the suggestion that Mr. Ostrowski's proposal represented an attempt to bridge a gap between agency positions and public comment is frankly a bit difficult to accept. The net effect of his action was to preclude serious discussion of the proposal then on the table, let alone any effort to substantially increase protections for fish and streams. Beyond their substantive content and procedural impact, the manner in which these proposals were presented seemed to reflect an indifference to the public's role in crafting these critically important protections. It is important that the committee deny Mr. Ostrowski confirmation not only for his own failure to move forward on these critical issues, but also to encourage the timber industry as a whole to take a more realistic approach to implementing effective protections for California's watersheds. The industry has frankly failed to uphold its promises to play a constructive role in putting robust rules in place to protect our water and fish. To confirm Mr. Ostrowski in his seat on the Board of Forestry at this time would be to reward and encourage this pattern of obstruction. I urge you to continue your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Briefly, please.
Sure, I will try my best to be brief. Pamela Flick from Defenders of Wildlife. We were on the aforementioned letter that Mr. Greason just mentioned. We oppose the confirmation of Mr. Ostrowski. We urge the Commission to consider the professional opinion and feedback from both of the state agencies on this, especially considering that Department of Fish and Game has the authority and expertise of managing our imperiled species and also has the management authority of our state's wildlife resources. We concur with the department's assessment that the T&I watershed rules will weaken the protections for the listed coho, and because of that and other aforementioned reasons, we oppose his confirmation.
Thank you. Briefly.
I'm Mark Rockwell. I'm with I'm the state representative for the Endangered Species Coalition here in California, which is a national organization of over 460 groups throughout the United States. A couple of things I think that I don't want to repeat things that have gone on. So for me, extinction is a permanent reality, and there is a public trust responsibility that the Board of Forestry and everybody involved with forestry, frankly, has to prevent extinction when that is on the agenda, which it certainly is for California Central Coastal Steelhead, coho. So I think one comment I would like to make that should clarify some things, because I've participated in the Board of Forestry meetings over the last many months leading up to the T&I rule public release, and the options put forward by Mr. Ostrowski and Mr. Nakamura prior to the first public release of the proposed T&I rules were driven by what appeared to be Mr. Ostrowski's efforts before the public comment was taken or reviewed. These saw the light of day at the Board of Forestry meeting when they were to decide if public release should be done or not. So they were new to everybody. Nobody had the chance to review them thoroughly. So it was, in my opinion, an 11th hour attempt to undermine the rules. The Ostrowski-Nakamura alternatives did not reflect the Science Board's recommendations as has been previously stated. So I want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Endicott with Sierra Club, California. The only thing I would add, you've discussed the substance and all, and you know the important role this committee plays in this process of confirmation. The only thing that I would say is this is not an attempt by us not to have Mr. Ostrowski's expertise or participation in the board's deliberations, but we think it should be from a seat similar to ours as a member of the public. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. I must say, after hearing much of this, it's as clear as mud to me. And I have some questions that I'm not sure can be answered right now or not. Question one is whether or not the administration's comment in their letter of September the 2nd, in which they say that optional amendments, and I'm not going to read the numbers here again, would not provide adequate protection or contribute to the recovery or restoration, whether or not that comment refers to the Ostrowski-Nakamura proposal that we've heard about here today. I don't know that. You say it doesn't. Others seem to say that it does. That needs some clarity for me. That's really the question for me, because the way that I look at this, I look at the administration, who we often have significant disagreements with on many issues, to be, let's just say, relatively balanced on on this particular issue. And as one of the witnesses said, the Senate and me personally, we have intervened on a number of occasions to make sure that these regulations move and that we actually have a framework and a better plan in California for protecting our precious fisheries. So they come out with a proposal, maybe imperfect, but it seems to have consensus. And then there is this interjection, not necessarily inappropriate for anybody to put forward their own proposal, but in the midst of the public comment period, which many say is weaker, and it's not just sort of an environmental industry fight, because the administration says here on page 2 that these amendments do not provide adequate protection. And so I guess my bottom line is this. I haven't come to a conclusion, Mr. Ostrowski, about your confirmation. And you have until the 15th of January. And I'd like to put it over, because I need answers to the questions. And, I'd be willing to meet with you after session and talk through some of these things and have some further, some further dialogue so that I can be clear. And I want to be fair. I want to be fair to you, but I'm also bothered by the argument, if it's true, that that there was an effort at the last minute to weaken what is already a precarious balance in terms of these regulations. So that's what I want to do. That's my recommendation. Mr. Saito, I know that you must have been lonely sitting there throughout this last hour. There doesn't seem to be the same. It's okay. Yes, it is. I'm sure it is. The same controversy. I'm prepared to move your nomination forward, again, without prejudice, because I came in here thinking that I was not going to support your nomination based upon my preparation, all that I've heard, but I am genuinely on the fence, so to speak, because I think the facts need to be clarified a little bit more. So that is my recommendation and preference for how we act, that we take up Mr. Saito's nomination today, and then without prejudice, we continue a dialogue here with the possibility of coming back to the public session here in the Rules Committee and to sort of hammer this out a little bit more. All right?
That'd be fine.
Got to be as fair as we can here.
And I think I have worked since the beginning of my first term to get to this point in the regulations where we are going to hopefully adopt some permanent regulations. So I think my record will be clear, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it further.
Of course. All right. Is there, Senator Payson? Motion for Mr. Saito, and it doesn't take a motion to put over Mr. Ostrowski, but that will be the intent. Okay? Mr. Saito moved. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Dutton?
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Oropeza? Oropeza, aye. Onnested?
Aye.
Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg,
That will
aye.
move to the floor, and we'll continue. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very, very much. Very good. All right. Let us move briskly. Senator Onnested, Senator Dutton. With the remainder of the agenda, bill referrals, governor's appointees not required to appear, rule waiver requests. You got any that you want to? I understand you want to separate 19, 20, 21, and 23.
Is that right? May we add two things to the agenda also?
Yes.
We have an additional bill referral, AB 1585, to GO Committee. And then we have a sheet that was handed out with 5 bills that are 2910s being sent to various committees.
Do the members have that?
Looks like this.
No, let's make sure Senator Payson has it in front of her here. Dan? Okay, so
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
23.
No, what about 19, 20, and 21? Did you want to separate those two?
Yeah.
So you're separating those, and you have a question on 23. Go ahead on 23.
Yeah, my concern that's the creating the Joint Committee on the Master Plan. We actually did that back in 2002, and I'm just not sure what the necessity and there's going to be staffing, some other things. I'm just not sure why it's so critical at this point.
Let me clarify, because this is an issue we were concerned about too in terms of the funding. The Senate is not going to pay for it. The Assembly. Look. The master plan arises as a key issue, about every 5 years. And Dee Dee Alpert led the last effort, and, and it's time, I think, to elevate it again. And there's some committed members on both sides of the houses and on both sides of the aisle that really want to dig into this, and I think it's worthy, and the Assembly will pay for it. So.
Is that also the staffing too? I mean, they're taking care of everything.
They're taking care of the coffee.
No, staffing is what I mean. I'm concerned about because
Yes. Okay. So do you want to do that separately, or do you want to?
We'll do it separately.
Okay. So now here's what we want to do. Hold on. Where's that? Where are the ones that are off? Here they are. I'm sorry.
Okay, so 19.
Okay, well, I need a motion on 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Let's take those.
Oh, no, we're taking 10, 11, 12 off. For now, that's right. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 22, 24, 25, and 26.
So moved.
So moved by Senator Dutton. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Dutton?
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Oropeza? Oropeza, aye. Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Okay, what about I meant to include the 1585 and the 2910s as well.
So the walk-ons.
Those were included as well without objection, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
So now we get to items 19, 20, 21, and 23. Is there a motion on those items? Moved by Senator Oropeza. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Oropesa? Oropesa, aye. Onnested? Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
All right, so that passes 3-0. That is our full agenda. We do have an exec session. Okay, we're going to go into double top secret executive session.